Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the Noon News from Montana's news leader.
Good afternoon and welcome to the statewide Noon News. I'm Aja Goare. CIA Director and President Trump's pick for Secretary of State Mike Pompeo made a secret visit to North Korea over Easter weekend. This just days ahead of a summit where President Trump and dictator Kim Jong-un will meet face to face. CBS's Mola Lange has more.
President Trump hinted at it Tuesday afternoon.
We have had direct talks at very high levels, extremely high levels, with North Korea.
And confirmed it on Twitter this morning. CIA Director Mike Pompeo met with Kim Jong-un in North Korea. The meeting was to lay the groundwork for a face-to-face summit between the North Korean leader and President Trump later this year.
We'll be having meetings with Kim Jong-un very soon. That'll be taking place probably in early June or a little before that. Assuming things go well. It's possible things won't go well and we won't have the meetings.
The president said 5 summit locations were under consideration. The 2 most likely are a neutral spot in the demilitarized zone separating the North and South, or on a U.S. Navy vessel off the Korean peninsula. Pompeo is on Capitol Hill meeting with senators as part of the confirmation process for Secretary of State, and lawmakers only learned about his North Korea trip after the press reported it.
If truth and being forthcoming as the Secretary of State nominee is one of the standards we'd like to see for the next Secretary of State, I think he failed that.
I think it's good news that there's some upfront work being done, but I'm very disturbed that the CIA is the group that is trying to work out the parameters of the meeting.
Pompeo's confirmation as Secretary of State is not guaranteed, with at least 2 Republican senators saying they do not support his nomination. Mola Lange, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
And the White House says President Trump and Kim Jong-un have not yet spoken to each other. Meanwhile, a passenger on the Southwest Airlines flight that made an emergency landing after a blown engine Tuesday has died. Investigators with the National Transportation Safety Board are examining that plane today. The engine blew about 20 minutes into the flight from New York to Dallas, blasting shrapnel through a window and causing the plane to lose pressure. Jennifer Reardon of New Mexico was killed after she was partially sucked out of the shattered window. Holly Mackey, a former Miles City resident living in Oklahoma, tells us she was 2 seats from that window. We'll hear from Mackey later tonight on your local MTN stations. 2 men wrongly convicted of a 1994 murder and robbery in Helena walked out of prison Tuesday free men. Freddie Lawrence and co-defendant Paul Jenkins left the Montana State Prison after serving more than 2 decades behind bars. They were convicted of killing Donna Marr and robbing the Jackson Creek Saloon outside Helena. Lawrence's 2 attorneys with the Montana Innocence Project secured his release after proving there was no DNA at the scene matching him or Jenkins. A re-examination of DNA linked David Nelson to the murder. Nelson is currently serving time for a double homicide in Deer Lodge. The suspect in a Tuesday bank robbery in downtown Great Falls is in custody today. Dispatchers received a call from Stockman Bank near 1st Avenue North and 5th Street reporting a bank robbery. Police obtained a photo of the suspect from the bank's video surveillance. Within 20 minutes of the first call, officers located the suspect not far away and took that person into custody. The suspect's name was not released. Due to statewide budget cuts, the Great Falls Youth Transition Center is closing its doors in May. The Montana Department of Corrections made the announcement this morning. The center serves as a group home for boys age 15 to 17 on juvenile parole. The program provided around-the-clock supervision along with life skills training. The boys will be sent back home or to live with relatives and in some cases to other group homes. 7 employees will lose their jobs. The facility's budget this year was over $768,000. Montana smokers would have to shell out $2 more in taxes next year under a proposed ballot measure. Initiative 185 to increase tobacco taxes in Montana and extend Medicaid expansion now approved today for signature gathering. Tobacco products and e-cigarette supplies would be taxed higher. Part of the money generated would fund the state share of Medicaid expansion, which provides health coverage for 94,000 low-income Montanans. Medicaid expansion in Montana is currently set to expire next year, but I-185 would extend the program. Supporters must collect over 25,000 signatures by June 22nd to qualify it for the ballot. The Eastern Montana Catholic Diocese faces a new controversy after a Great Falls priest publicly condemned the Billings Catholic school system. The young, outspoken priest who attended Billings Catholic schools posted statements online criticizing the system for allowing what he calls a prominent homosexual couple to chair its largest fundraiser. Father Ryan Erlenbush posted this, quote, "You know a Catholic school has lost its way when a prominent homosexual couple is advertised as the chairs for the annual fundraiser. Why would any Catholic attend or donate to Mayfair 2018? What does a Catholic school have to do before people say enough and take their kids elsewhere?" Mayfair is the Billings Catholic School's largest fundraiser. The foundation is backing the event's 6 chair members and tells us since the priest's post went viral, a number of donations have come in. Now, we've made numerous attempts to reach the Roman Catholic Diocese of Great Falls Billings, but have not heard back. As the University of Montana grapples with declining enrollment and a $10 million budget deficit, the school's new president eyes a series of program and staff cuts. The plan includes cutting up to 50 full-time faculty positions over the next 3 years. President Seth Bodner criticized the past decision to limit the school's marketing effort. He plans to restore that funding and says UM must further efforts of program reorganization and realignment. Bodner says this is just the beginning of an ongoing conversation at UM. Montana wildlife officials are searching for a young black bear that escaped from the Montana Wildlife Rehab Facility at Montana Wild in Helena. The female black bear was first noticed missing during a routine check Wednesday morning. That animal escaped through an opening in a chain link fence. The dark brown bear is 3 to 4 years old and weighs around 60 pounds. It has a white ear tag with the number 3135. The bear did not turn up in a search of the immediate area near Spring Meadow Lake State Park and Kessler Elementary School. School officials have been notified. If you see the bear, call 911 and do not approach it. We turn now to the Weather Center with Ed McIntosh, and we got spring weather across the state. How are we looking today?
You know, it's actually really good news, Asia, because it's been really tough on ag producers here as of late with very limited field work over the course of the last short while. In fact, last week, the Montana Crop Progress Report reported less than a half day on average statewide. That compares to 4 days of field work that's available this time of the year. And with limited grazing, right now, 75% of the grazing land is listed as difficult or closed. 2/3 of the state is usually open by now, and that's put a real stress on livestock feed. So most of the animals now on supplement, and that's also put a stress on the hay supplies. But things are looking up. We'll take a look at the forecast details coming up in just a few minutes.
Thanks, Ed. We'll check back in. Former First Lady Barbara Bush is being remembered as a fiercely loyal wife and mother and a leading public servant in her own right. CBS's Weijia Zhang has more on her death.
As First Lady, Barbara Bush took up the cause of child and adult literacy.
If more people could read, write, and comprehend, we would be that much closer to solving so many of the problems that plague our nation.
But it was her role as mother of 6 and wife of former President George H.W. Bush that was most important to her.
I'm the mother of wonderful children and the wife of the world's greatest man.
A family spokesman took to Twitter Tuesday, writing, "The 41st president, to whom she was married for 73 years, held her hand all day and was at her side when she died." Earlier this week, the Bush family announced the family matriarch was in failing health and had decided to receive comfort care at home. The 92-year-old will be laid to rest Saturday on the grounds of the George Bush Presidential Library, next to her daughter Robin, who died of leukemia as a child. Courtney Zabowski, CBS News, Houston, Texas.
And in Washington, D.C., the Senate opened with a prayer and tribute to Mrs. Bush. The latest ag news is next and still ahead. Hurricane Maria punished Puerto Rico nearly 7 months ago, but residents are still facing power problems. Details next. But first, Ed has our weather forecast. Stay with us.
You're watching MTN News with Aja Goare, Storm Tracker weather with Ed McIntosh, and farm and ranch news from the Northern Egg Network. This is the noon news on Q2, Montana's news leader.